My name is Andy Cochran, and I work for a company called Orem Home Technology in Denver, Colorado.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So, actually, a lot of our students who graduate in political science end up working not in political science. Tell me kind of how you got from BYU, Idaho to where you are now.
Well, so when I was at BYU Idaho, one of the reasons that I chose the school was because my wife and well, I hadn't met her yet, but one of my goals was to graduate without any student debt. And so all through college, I worked while I also went to school. And while I was in my last few semesters, I got a job at a small electronics company there in Rexburg, and kind of fell in love with home technology. And as I was getting ready to graduate, I had to make a decision between preparing for law school or pursuing something that I had become pretty passionate about. And my wife and I decided that since I was excited about home technology, that I would pursue that instead for a while and kind of test the waters. And then I could always go back to law school if I chose to later on. And my career ended up kind of taking off in what I'm doing now. And one thing led to another. And here I am now, about 12 years in to like really high end home technology.
That's great. So, what advice would you give to students that are trying to figure out should they do grad school, law school, or just get a job and start working?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things that you have to have in mind at the same time, right? One is your goals for your family, what sort of position you want to be in financially, or what sort of goals you have for your lifestyle. And another is what you feel passionate about and what you feel drawn to from a sense of feeling excitement for your work. I think if I was going to give any advice, it would be one, keep track of your goals, right? Because it's pretty easy to become distracted if there's something that comes along that's kind of easy to get into, and you have to look at what will come of that down the road if you pursue that course. And if you're choosing between, say, graduate school or law school or some other industry, I think you can be happy doing just about anything if you really feel drawn to it and excited about it. But you do need to keep in mind what your goals are, and that may cause you to not pursue one thing or another because there's ultimately more of a future in one direction or another.
So, do you like if you were going back in time, would you maybe not do political science as a degree if you knew you weren't going to end up in law school? Or do you think that it was a good choice to do political science?
Political science for me was a good choice. I feel I still am fairly politically active. I get together with the local political party in my area, and I feel really drawn to being engaged civically. And I feel like having the political science background helps me in other ways too. It's a degree that teaches you so many skills that become useful kind of whatever you end up pursuing. So I don't have any regrets about my degree. I think had I or if I was able to do it over, I might pursue a business minor or something as a minor that has a little bit more of that kind of broad appeal. But I'm proud and happy with the degree that I earned.
So, as you were right, because political science doesn't necessarily train you for the job that you ended up doing. Did you feel along the way that there were skills you wish you had learned in college, or were you able to sort of pick them up in the workforce as it like need presented itself?
So in my industry in specific, it's pretty easy to pick up what you need to learn through industry trainings and other things that don't require a formal technical background. I think it depends on what you end up ultimately doing. But for me, I do wish that I had taken some accounting classes or some other things. But I will say that courses like statistics became really valuable, have a ton of applications. Being able to communicate effectively and the amount of writing and reading and comprehension that's required to earn the political science degree, those things are all very applicable and have been a big benefit to me.
So, what advice would you give to students while they're in school to prepare themselves for life after graduation?
Mm. Well, a few things that come to mind for me are one, to try to be really active in school. I think that whether you are working while you're going to school or if you're able to get really involved with clubs or with extracurriculars, those things I think have more of an application in some ways than the coursework itself, because it teaches you how to be social, how to make friends, meet people and discuss whatever their interests are across a broad spectrum of things. And if I were to go back and do it over, I would have been a little bit more involved in the political science extracurriculars and done a little bit more on campus. I was in a bishopric in a singles ward and some other things that kept me really busy. But BYU Idaho was such a unique environment because I got to do so many different things that, have applications now and have been a help since then.
Yeah. So thinking about your choice to work while you were in school so that you could avoid debt and also you were serving in a bishopric, like all of that stuff made you very, very busy. And some people will say, I'm maybe not going to work while I'm in college because I want to just focus on that, and maybe I'll get into some debt for living expenses and things like that. What counsel would you give students who are trying to figure out this balance between working and debt as they go through college?
Well, I think everybody's situation is probably a little bit different, and you have to listen to the spirit, I think, is probably a big piece of it. What feels right to one person may not be right for another. And I think the decision of how much debt to take on or whether to work or whatever you do has to be the right thing for you. For me personally, I was raised in a family where debt was just a four-letter word and we did everything we could to avoid it. And I think that's generally good counsel. But I think that in some cases, taking on a little bit of student debt, if it gives you the flexibility to be able to focus more on your schoolwork, that investment ultimately will pay off as long as you have a plan for how you're going to pay off that debt or how you're going to approach things in your career afterwards.
Did you find that finishing college debt free gave you freedom in your work environment that you might not have had otherwise?
Yeah, it did. Looking back, having being in a position where I didn't have to earn as much to get by gave me the flexibility to venture out into a new career path that the entry point of income wise was quite a bit lower, and not having to go out and immediately find a high paying job let me grow organically within an industry where skills are developed over time. The ramp up to earning more was fairly quick, which was great, but having less pressure added on by the debt or what would have been pressure from debt really helped us have flexibility.
That's awesome. Okay, anything else you want to share? Anything else you've thought about that you think BYU Idaho students ought to know?
Really, I think to me, the goals thing is so big that if you have a vision going into school and something that you really feel drawn to, try not to get distracted from that. If I could do it over, I think at this point I probably would have gone to law school. It's not where my life has taken me now, and who knows, maybe it's just me saying the grass is probably greener on the other side or whatever. But having there's a reason that we choose the major that we do or the passion that we have while we go to school. Try not to lose sight of that. And whether you end up in that field or not, it's great because, political science is something everybody needs good community leaders. We need people to be active in local political parties. We need people to be volunteering. I think that you can still have a really satisfying experience, but if you feel excited and passionate about what you're studying, stick with it and make some goals around that. And I think that'll lead to long term success.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Andy. All right, I'm going to stop recording.
Okay, thank you.